You are not allowed in here." The loud shout from the security guard echoed through the luxurious lobby of the Roosevelt Plaza Hotel in New York. All eyes immediately turned to the young man in a dark blue delivery jacket, still holding a steaming hot pizza box, standing on the snow-white marble floor. His face was cold and unresponsive, but his gray eyes shone with a terrifying patience. "I told you to leave your stuff at the back door." The guard continued to growl. "This is a 5-star hotel, not a highway rest stop." A few well-dressed patrons stopped to watch the show, but the young man didn't move. He stood there, his eyes glued to the gold nameplate behind the counter. Roosevelt Plaza, since 1951. Then he gently opened his mouth, his voice calm but loud enough for the whole hall to hear. "Excuse me, has the executive director on the penthouse floor received the notice? About who will be inspecting the entire hotel facilities today?" New York. A March afternoon. Melting snow dotted the sidewalks of Park Avenue. The sky was a dull gray, as if waiting for something to happen. In a blue glass skyscraper in the middle of Manhattan, on the 52nd floor, the executive meeting room of Lee Holdings, one of the largest diversified investment groups in the United States, is filled with a heavy atmosphere. Richard Lee, 61, the group's chairman, sat at the head of the table with a deep gaze. On the large screen behind him was a digital map of the luxury hotel chain the group was considering investing in, with the name, Roosevelt Plaza, underlined in red. This hotel has a long history. A prime location in Midtown Manhattan, and classic, modern design. But I don't care about the exterior. Richard tapped his fingers on the glass table. "I want to know what the report doesn't say, how it treats its people." All eyes were on Ethan Lee, a young man sitting quietly at the end of the table. Chestnut brown hair, tall, with sharp, cold gray eyes. He was dressed casually, a turtleneck sweater, blazer and no tie, but his demeanor exuded confidence and a hint of arrogance. Ethan is the only one of the young leaders who has never worked directly in any department of Lee Holdings. After graduating with an MBA from Oxford, he turned down an executive role to travel and freelance. Many in the group thought he was just a favored rich kid. But today, Ethan spoke slowly and clearly, breaking the silence. "I have a proposal." Richard raised his eyebrows. "Speak. Don't send an audit team. Don't give me any notice. Just let me be there, as a delivery man." Ethan emphasized each word. "I want to know what it feels like to walk into Roosevelt Plaza with no power, no title, no privilege." The entire conference room was stunned. One of the advisors chuckled. "Are you kidding? The heir to a billion-dollar corporation delivering pizza?" Ethan didn't smile. He looked straight at his father. "If you really want a truthful report, then that is the only way. No respectful glances, no red carpets, no welcoming glasses, just a look of truth." Richard was silent for a long time. He had been a man who started from nothing, and he understood exactly what his son was trying to prove. "I will not be named Lee. Of course. You won't get any privileges." Ethan nodded. Richard sighed, then chuckled, a laugh Ethan hadn't seen in years. "Then go. Let Roosevelt let you explore." 3 days later, Ethan stood in a small rented bedroom in a quiet Latino neighborhood in Queens. He wore a blue delivery jacket, his hair tousled as if he had had a long day, but his eyes were eager. He signed up as a delivery driver for a food delivery app. His name in the system was Eli Tan, and his nationality was listed as Asian American. No one could find out his true origin. On his phone, he saw the order pop up, XL Pizza. Ground floor, Roosevelt Plaza. Ethan took a deep breath. He was ready. That morning, the Roosevelt Plaza lobby sparkled like a Hollywood movie. Crystal chandeliers cast shimmering light on the white marble floors, and cream-colored receptionists stood behind glass counters, smiling faintly at each wealthy guest who passed by. But when Ethan pushed the door open and entered, the smell of pizza wafted out with every step, and the security guard's gaze immediately changed. "You are not allowed in here." The Roosevelt Plaza was unlike any hotel Ethan had ever visited. He had traveled to more than 20 countries, stayed in everything from the finest suites in Tokyo to private beach villas in Saint-Tropez. But this time he arrived as invisible. Still wearing his blue delivery uniform and old sneakers, Ethan stood in front of the basement window where the delivery guys usually deliver packages. From here, he saw a completely different world, No crystal chandeliers. No soft classical music. No fresh flowers or fake smiles. There was only the smell of sweat. The sound of vacuum cleaners. Hurried footsteps and tired looks of people working behind the scenes. The door opened. A petite, tanned woman with her hair pulled back in a rubber band peered at Ethan through the scratched metal door. "You deliver pizza?" she said quickly, her voice laced with a Mexican accent. "Yes, the kitchen requested it." She nodded, leading Ethan into the narrow hallway, lit only by pale blue fluorescent lights. "Welcome to Roosevelt's real world." She smiled. "I'm Maria." Ethan followed her through the cramped staff rooms. The break rooms with their broken chairs and the tables filled with cold lunchboxes. He saw women with veiny hands and chipped nails folding towels into carts. An old man, hunched over, didn't have enough teeth to smile, pushed a garbage cart. Maria left him in front of the kitchen door. "They'll sign for it. Be careful not to say too much or you'll be thrown out again." Ethan thanked him, handed over the pizza, and quietly turned to leave. But instead of leaving, he walked down the hallway, trying to memorize the paths, the exits, and the name tags on everyone's shirts. He walked not too fast, not too slow, just enough to listen, to observe. A moment later, he returned to the staff area. Maria was sitting, sipping cold instant coffee. Ethan grabbed a can from the vending machine and sat across from her, trying to look casual. "How long have you worked here?" Maria looked at him, her wary eyes softening a bit when she saw that he wasn't like the usual joking delivery man. 4 years. Started as a housekeeper, now temporary team leader. But the pay is the same. No formal contract, no insurance. She shrugged. "They call us off-duty staff. Only when needed. No responsibilities. Saves you from paying more benefits." Ethan nodded, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Don't you want to rest?" Maria smiled sadly. "And where? I have a small child. My mother is sick. I need this job, even if it is unfair. It is better than nothing." The answer made Ethan's heart sink. He wanted to ask more, but didn't want to be obvious. "My name is Eli," he said, holding out his hand. Maria shook his hand, her eyes softening. "Welcome to Roosevelt, Eli. If you really want to get to know this place, stay a few more shifts. Don't just make deliveries and disappear." For the next 2 days, Ethan picked up extra shifts at the Roosevelt. Sometimes he delivered water. Sometimes he moved luggage. He learned to navigate the unmarked floors of the map, figuring out how to get into the staff area without arousing suspicion. He witnessed a female employee being severely scolded for dropping a glass. A customer shouted at her, "Where did you learn to clear tables like that?" While the supervisor just stood there, saying nothing. He saw Chef Juan, a man in his 60s, whose legs trembled because of gout, still having to stand frying potatoes for nearly 8 hours a day. He saw Sayuri, a 19-year-old Japanese girl, being criticized by her manager for not knowing how to smile properly at VIP guests. Ethan recorded all of this with a button camera tucked into his uniform. On Tuesday evening, Ethan sat in his small Queens apartment, turned on his laptop, and played back a video he had recorded in his kitchen, a scene of Gary, the head security guard, yelling at a black delivery man, forcing him to bend down and pick up a towel that had fallen on the floor because, "You dirty my carpet." Ethan closed his eyes. His breathing quickened. For the first time in his life, he felt disgusted with the very system he was about to inherit. And he found himself unable to turn away. Not just because of Roosevelt, but because of each person, each Maria, each Juan, each Sayuri, who were considered non-existent in the eyes of the upper class. In 3 days, Roosevelt would be holding an investor appreciation event. Ethan knew that the event was the perfect time to act. But before he could do that, he needed to approach the man in charge of running the hotel, Director Philip Worth, the man known as the King of Masks in the hotel industry, who always smiled at the press and stepped on the backs of his staff when necessary. Ethan looked at his watch. 9:30 p.m. He sent a coded message to his father's personal secretary. Step 1 complete. Request Roosevelt internal analysis within 24 hours. Meet Philip on Friday event. Begin phase 2. He stood up, his eyes no longer that of a delivery man, but it was the gaze of someone preparing to lift the final veil. Roosevelt Plaza at night is a whole other world. The lights in the lobby were dimmed, and soft jazz played through the ceiling speakers. The well-heeled guests had retreated to their rooms, or were getting drunk in the ground floor bar. Now the hotel's lower floors, which the guest maps never showed, were really coming to life. And Ethan, under the guise of Eli Tan, a night delivery man, appears again. 2217, laundry area, B1 floor. You're on time. Maria greeted Ethan with a tired smile. She was wearing a dark gray uniform and was folding towels onto a cart. Her face was covered in sweat. Despite the cold temperature in the laundry room, Ethan helped her push the cart into the hallway, where the fluorescent light cast hazy shadows on the old tile. They were silent, until a small scream came from the corner of the hallway near the tool shed. Ethan stopped instinctively. Maria turned, her voice low. It's Sayuri again. They walked quickly. At the end of the hallway, Sayuri, a small, skinny Japanese girl, was blocked by a tall intern with a name tag that read, Matt R. Hospitality Intern. He laughed, holding her arm. Don't act like I'm the bad guy. I just told you not to walk by without saying hello. In America, that's rude, he said, his face red from the alcohol. He's drunk, Maria whispered. He was reported last time. But HR said, there wasn't enough evidence. Ethan stepped forward, trying to keep his voice calm. Is there a problem here? Matt turned around, his eyes taking in the newcomer for a few seconds. When he saw it was just a small Asian delivery man, he smirked. None of your business. Ethan didn't reply. He took a step forward, looking Matt straight in the eye. There was no anger, just silence, the kind of silence that made people recoil. Matt shrugged, let go of Sayuri's hand, and walked away. The little girl burst into tears. Thank you, she choked. Maria took Sayuri to the break room, and Ethan stood there long after they left. The hallway walls were stained with light, and he felt like he had touched an unhealed wound, covered in a layer of paint called glossy. 2341, kitchen area, B2 floor. In the main kitchen, Ethan sat chatting with Juan, the hotel's oldest chef. He was peeling potatoes, each movement slow and patient, like someone carving a statue. You don't seem like the other delivery men, Juan said, his eyes crinkling behind round glasses. Why do you think so? You look at people. Delivery people usually just look at their phones. Ethan smiled. I prefer to listen. Juan nodded. I've been here since the hotel didn't have an electronic ordering system. Back then, every order was a piece of paper. The chef was French. Now, he looked around, his eyes blank. It's just an assembly line. A staff member ran by and spilled some water. Ethan quickly picked up a towel to wipe it up. Just then, a deep voice rang out from behind. What are you doing in the kitchen at midnight? Ethan turned around. A tall man in a neat black suit, with slicked back gray hair and a razor-sharp face, stood behind him. Philip Worth, CEO of Roosevelt Plaza. Philip looked at Ethan with a questioning gaze. What is your name? Eli. I just deliver. Usually delivery staff are not allowed to stay in the kitchen after completing their duties. Ethan bowed his head, looking scared. I'm sorry. I'm just talking to Mr. Juan. Next time I'll leave right after I deliver. Philip stepped closer, his voice low. You know what I hate most? People who don't know where they fit in. He adjusted his cuffs, looking Ethan up and down. Where do you think you can fit in? Delivery people should know where they're supposed to stand. Ethan didn't speak, but in his mind, Philip's every word was being recorded by the microphone under his shirt. Next time, Philip said before turning away, you won't be allowed in here again. 108, staff break room. Ethan lay on the old sofa. Maria sat next to him, putting a cold towel on Sayuri's forehead while telling old stories. When I first got here, Mr. Philip used to throw a Christmas party for the staff. Everyone got presents. Now, do you remember what we had for lunch yesterday? Leftovers from the guest buffet. And they call it a treat. Ethan whispered. Maria looked at him, as if trying to guess the person behind the delivery mantle. But then she smiled. Thanks for earlier. Ethan nodded slightly. Thank you for showing me things worth knowing. The next morning, an email from Lee Holdings' corporate office was sent to Ethan, with attached internal documents, payroll, complaint list, reports from Roosevelt employees sent but archived without processing. Ethan turned the pages one by one. In his hand was a copy of the complaint against Matt R. from 3 months ago. The final note. Insufficient basis for wrongdoing. Recommend not further investigation. Just below is Juan's disapproved leave application for health reasons. The picture slowly emerged, and now Ethan had no more doubts. Roosevelt is a model broken from within. 7:10 a.m. Roosevelt Plaza, ground floor. Ethan was wearing a blue delivery uniform, carrying a carefully packaged premium breakfast box from the kitchen. The label read, "Penthouse. VIP room. Mr. Philip Worth, CEO." He entered the main hall through the main entrance. The first time in 3 days that he had to go through the basement door. But just as he reached the middle of the hall, Gary, the head guard, stopped him. "Who are you? Where are you delivering from?" Ethan gave the order number. "From the online breakfast ordering system." Confirmed by the chef. Gary glanced at the tablet in his hand, then lowered his voice. "This place doesn't accept deliveries from outsiders. Take the service elevator at the back. This order specifically requires hand delivery. Mr. Worth only eats breakfast delivered from his own system." Gary frowned. He couldn't ignore the big boss. But he didn't want to let the cheap uniformed guy into the VIP area. After a few seconds of hesitation, he snapped, "I'll go with you. Just deliver the goods, then come down immediately." Ethan nodded slightly. 7:22, VIP elevator, going up to the penthouse floor. Gary stood across from Ethan in the elevator. No one spoke. The air was tense. Ethan held the breakfast box still warm in his hands, the scent of buttered toast wafting through the air. But in his mind, each passing second was a test. The patience of the powerful when forced to confront what they normally ignore. "Are you new?" Gary asked, his voice low. "Just temporarily," Ethan replied curtly. "Then remember this. Here, people who are not in the system are worthless." The door opened just as the sentence ended. 7:24, penthouse, main meeting room. The room was flooded with natural light, with a glass ceiling that offered panoramic views of Manhattan. A long conference table was covered with a white tablecloth and gold-plated dinnerware. 7 men and 2 women sat chatting, all in expensive suits, speaking English with heavy European accents. Ethan stepped forward, bowing slightly. "Mr. Worth's breakfast." Philip Worth sat at the head of the table, turned around, his eyes slightly surprised to see Ethan, the delivery man he had threatened 2 nights ago. "Oh, we meet again." Ethan set the box on the table. "Poached eggs and buttered toast as requested." Philip stood up, walked over, hands in his pockets, and said loudly enough for the whole table to hear, "Are you a delivery man, or a spy?" A few people in the room snickered. Ethan remained calm. "I only deliver the right thing." Philip stepped closer, his eyes cold. "This floor is for shareholders and executives only." "Who do you think allowed you to enter?" "He's coming with me," Gary interjected. Philip raised an eyebrow, turning to the conference table. "Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, we were just treated to a little drama, evidence that our security controls need upgrading." The room erupted in laughter. Ethan nodded slightly, stepping back toward the door. He knew there was nothing he could do now. But every contemptuous glance, every hidden message was being recorded by the hidden camera, clearly. As the elevator doors closed behind him, Ethan looked straight into the mirror in the elevator car. They really don't see us. In their eyes, we are lampstands, the sound of the wind, invisible people. 10:12 a.m., B1 floor, staff lounge. Maria opened the door, surprised to see Ethan back so soon. "What, got kicked out?" Ethan chuckled, pulling a small USB drive from his pocket. "I'll show you this later. But now, I need to ask, who among the employees has ever been fired or unfairly disciplined?" Maria hesitated, then she called 3 more people. A woman who had been fired for taking leftovers home. A young man who had been forced to quit for talking too intimately to a customer. And an old security guard who had been replaced by an automated machine after being criticized by a customer for being not polite enough. Ethan questioned each person, took notes, and asked permission to record their statements, promising anonymity. They looked at each other. Maria nodded first. "If you really aren't just doing it for views, then we believe you." That afternoon, in his small apartment in Queens, Ethan assembled all the footage into a 3-minute clip, starting with Gary insulting the delivery man. Then the elevator argument, Sayuri being harassed, and finally Philip's cold smile. At the end of the clip, he added white text on a black background. "A 5-star hotel cannot be run by a 1-star heart." He sent the clip to his father's private email. Step 2 complete. Ready for release day. New York, Wednesday 3:25 a.m. In a small rented room in Queens, Ethan Lee sat in the dark, the glow of his laptop screen illuminating his tense but alert face. His headphones played back the recording of his conversation with Philip Worth in the penthouse conference room. Every sneer, every contemptuous glance was recorded clearly, indisputably. Next to the laptop was a USB drive containing the pre-edited video, 3 minutes of succinct, dense, unsensational but clear as the midday sun. Every insult, every cold glance, every half-smile from someone in power, it said more than any internal report. Ethan opened the email tab. In the recipients section there were 5 addresses. investigations@nyt.com, tips@propublica.org, whistleblower@cnn.com, richard.lee@leeholdings.com, and an anonymous Gmail account, janitortruths@gmail.com. The address Ethan created specifically to post videos on social media under the name of an employee who was fired from Roosevelt. He typed a few lines. This is what is happening behind the glass of a 5-star hotel in the heart of New York. I cannot be silent any longer. The voiceless are still being silenced. Please listen to this. Send. A soft ding sounded. Message sent. No turning back. Wednesday 7:45 a.m. Lee Holdings office. In a glass room on the 52nd floor, Richard Lee was watching the video his son had sent him last night. His face was expressionless, but his eyes seemed to be scrutinizing each frame. When the clip ended, he turned his chair toward the glass door, looking down at the city that was starting a new day. You are not only doing something daring, you are declaring war on the very system that I built. The door to the office opened. Ethan walked in, no longer in his delivery uniform, but in a white shirt and a simple but neat ash-gray jacket. He went straight to his desk without sitting down. Richard turned back. Did you really send that clip? Ethan nodded. And I registered myself as one who must not be seen. Do you understand the consequences? If the shareholders think you're trying to sabotage the deal, they can remove you from the succession. So the chair is more important than the truth? The air froze for a moment. Then Richard sighed. What do you want? Ethan replied without hesitation. I want the shareholder meeting on Friday to be broadcast live. And I want to speak. In my official capacity. Ethan Lee, son of Chairman Lee Holdings. Wednesday 13:15, Roosevelt Plaza, employee break area. Ethan returned to the hotel. This time without food or hidden cameras. He brought only a promise. In the break room, Maria, Sayuri and Juan were waiting. Their eyes were worried after seeing the video that had started circulating online since morning. The version posted under the name, Janitor Truths, had more than 200,000 views in just a few hours. Is it you? Maria asked. Uncertain. Ethan nodded. And I don't hide anymore. Are you crazy? Sayuri exclaimed. If they find out you posted the video, they will sue you. They will take you to court. Ethan smiled. They can't sue for the truth. Juan just quietly placed his hand on Ethan's shoulder. You did something I never dreamed possible. Whatever happens, I thank you. Maria looked at him for a long time. You don't just deliver pizza. You give us hope. Thursday 10:45 a.m., local TV. CNN and the New York Times have officially confirmed that they received the video and are verifying its content. ProPublica contacted Ethan for an anonymous interview. But he declined, citing, I'm going to go public. In person. And where they called me, trash. Right here at Roosevelt. Friday 1800, Roosevelt Plaza, International Investment Banquet Hall. The Roosevelt's third-floor grand lobby was lit up like a ball. On the stage was the Lee Holdings logo, flanked by the US and EU flags. Guests included hundreds of shareholders, bank executives, and representatives of investment firms. Ethan stood backstage, wearing a black suit and gray tie, silently watching the projector screen. Next to him was Richard, holding the event script. Are you sure? Ethan asked softly. Richard didn't answer right away. He just touched his son's shoulder lightly, then handed him the lapel microphone. Go, do what you believe is right. And remember, don't bow your head, no matter who is looking. Friday 1812, Roosevelt Plaza, Grand Ballroom. Faint applause rang out as the MC introduced, and now, We are honored to invite Ethan Lee to the stage, son of Chairman Richard Lee. Representing the next generation of leaders of Lee Holdings. Ethan stepped onto the stage, the spotlight shining directly on his face. Completely different from his casual appearance during his days as an invisible delivery man. He now stood in a sophisticated black suit. His gestures calm, each step sure as if he was born to step onto this stage. But there was something in his eyes, not quite upper class. The room fell silent, waiting for a formulaic speech. A toast, gratitude, expectation, the kind you've heard 100 times. But Ethan didn't take a note. He didn't thank the guests by name. He just looked around, very slowly, and began to speak. I stand here today, not to talk about numbers or profitability, not to introduce the future of Lee Holdings. I stand here to talk about the 3 days I lived in this very place, not as an heir, but as a delivery man. A slight stir spread through the auditorium. Philip Worth, who was at the table of honor, paused in the middle of raising his glass. A deep line creased his temple. Richard Lee remained motionless, his eyes fixed on his son. During those 3 days, I was pushed out the back door, looked down upon, and scolded like scum. I saw employees working 12 hours a day without a contract, being called unworthy of serving VIP guests. I saw a girl being harassed and no one standing up for her. I saw a 5-star hotel with a 1-star heart. No one said anything. All eyes were on the stage. I wrote it all down. And if you don't believe me, Ethan raised his hand to signal. The giant LED screen behind him lit up. A clip starts playing. First, Gary, the head security guard, angrily kicks a black delivery man out of the lobby for smelling. Then, Sayuri is held down in a corner by intern Matt R. Then, Philip Worth's voice in the conference room. Who are you to stand in our world? The auditorium exploded. Many people shook their heads. And some shareholders whispered to each other. A middle-aged woman, a hedge fund manager from Boston, stood up and snapped. Is this for real? Philip Worth jumped up. Stop. This video is not verified. It may be edited. Ethan did not turn to look at him. He continued speaking evenly. If this is a cut, Roosevelt should sue me. But before you do, please ask the staff standing in the back of the auditorium. A door opened. Maria, Juan, Sayuri, and a dozen or so hotel staff walked in. They were in uniform, their heads bowed, but their eyes were steady. Some of them received the first round of applause from international guests. Then, gradually, the entire hall rose to its feet. A thunderous applause, not for Ethan, but for the faces that had been forgotten. 1838, on stage. Philip Worth growled, moving closer to Ethan. You don't understand the consequences of this. You're tarnishing the system. Ethan replied, without a microphone. I do not smear the truth. I only take off its mask. Before Philip could respond, Richard Lee stood up. He slowly walked up to the podium, raising his hand for the microphone. I am Richard Lee, chairman of Lee Holdings. I know you are surprised. So am I. But I am not ashamed of what my son did. I am ashamed of myself for thinking that just by buying a hotel, I could own its culture. He looked at Philip. Mr. Worth, as of this moment, you are no longer the CEO of Roosevelt Plaza. The applause rang out again. But this time it was deeper, more genuine. Philip bowed his head, no longer reacting. 1900, backstage room. Maria wiped her tears. Juan smiled brightly for the first time in years. Sayuri hugged Ethan tightly, then quickly stepped back. Blushing, Ethan looked at them, saying nothing. Maria whispered, you didn't have to save us. But you did. Ethan chuckled. No, you guys saved Roosevelt. Monday, 3 days after the announcement, CNN New York International Media Office. The newsroom wall was filled with screens, each one a large headline. Son of Lee Holdings chairman pretends to be a delivery man to expose 5-star hotel, CNN. Janitor truths. The quiet uprising shaking the service industry, New York Times. Is Ethan Lee a hero? Or a traitor to the elite? Forbes. Hashtag justice for staff hits top Twitter trends globally in 48 hours, Twitter trends. Ethan's exposé of Roosevelt Plaza exploded like an earthquake. Every piece of footage, every word spoken in the hall that day is being analyzed, dissected, and shared at the speed of light. A wave of public outrage poured into the major hotel chains, raising the question for the entire industry. Who is really serving whom? Meanwhile, Columbia and White Law Office. Midtown. We officially filed a lawsuit against Ethan Lee and Lee Holdings for defamation, breach of honor, and destruction of personal and organizational reputation. Representative Attorney Philip Worth spoke to the press camera. His voice cold as steel. Thick file with bold title. Worth vs. Lee Holdings minus $25.000 in damages. The legal battle officially begins. That night, penthouse. Ethan's private apartment. The lights of New York City streamed through the glass windows onto the polished wooden floor. Ethan sat alone, his laptop open, and next to him were 3 partnership contracts from European investment groups that had arrived in the past 2 days. It seemed that some investors were not afraid of scandal, on the contrary. They smelled the potential for rebranding with Ethan's ethical image. But Ethan did not touch the contract. The laptop screen was playing a video from an anonymous YouTube channel, where a woman named Gloria, a former Roosevelt employee, shared her story of being forced to take time off work when she became pregnant. I used to believe that just working hard was enough. But then they said I didn't fit the brand image. I left quietly, and I thank Ethan for speaking up for us. Ethan stared at the screen, not with pride, but because I feel the responsibility is growing to the point where it cannot be avoided. The next morning, Lee Holdings headquarters 52nd floor. The executive conference room was packed. Richard Lee sat in the chair, his fingers tapping the table like a clock counting down. I don't need to elaborate on the impact of the video. His voice was calm, but there was a palpable tension behind it. We're divided. One side believes Ethan saved the company's reputation. The other side believes my son ruined a historic deal. A middle-aged financial director spoke up. Sir, Lee Holdings stock is fluctuating. Some investors are concerned that the Ethan brand is getting out of control. Another added, we need to know, is Ethan just a media firebrand? Or is he truly capable of leading the charge? Richard was silent. Then he turned to Ethan, who had been sitting at the end of the table, and had not said anything until now. Ethan, you have 3 choices. 1. Withdraw, leaving the matter to the legal and communications team. 2. Take over Roosevelt's role for a year, restructuring from within, with high risks and extreme pressure. 3. Give up the inheritance, leave Lee Holdings, to pursue your own ideals. The whole room turned to Ethan. No one spoke. Even the air conditioning seemed to have stopped working. Ethan slowly stood up. His voice was calm. I choose option 2. The next day, media coverage. Ethan Lee officially takes over as Roosevelt Plaza's CEO. Reorganization plan begins next week. Meanwhile, the hashtags shifted from hashtag janitor truths to hashtag Ethan rebuilds and hashtag Roosevelt renewed. Some articles hailed him as a pioneer, while financial papers coldly asked, can the young man bear the weight of his own creation? 3 days later, Staff Lounge, Roosevelt Plaza. Ethan walked into the staff lounge. For the first time not as Eli, the delivery man. He wore a gray shirt, with a name tag, Ethan Lee, Executive Director, but his eyes were still the same as before, when he stood next to Maria, Sayuri, Juan, and listened to them talk about injustice. Maria raised her head, her voice half doubtful, half emotional. So, you're really staying? Ethan smiled. I don't just stay. I start here. From everyone. He presented a reform plan. Formal contracts for all short-term contract employees. Increase basic salary. Establish an anonymous complaint line directly to the executive office. Eliminate the discriminatory customer attitude rating system. Juan held the new payslip, his hands shaking. Sayuri whispered, "This feels like a dream." Ethan replied softly, "It's not a dream. This is the beginning." New York, 1 week after Ethan takes over Roosevelt Plaza. The Roosevelt Hotel seemed to have a different feel, less glitz, more anticipation. The lobby was still all crystal chandeliers and polished marble. But now the once forgotten staff were more visible. They no longer avoided eye contact. They no longer tiptoed through the lobby with a mop. They looked up, because the leader was now one of them. But in the 18th floor office, where Ethan relocated his new headquarters to be closer to the staff area, the atmosphere was heavy. Richard Lee had just finished a 40-minute phone call with his team of lawyers. When he looked up, Ethan, who was leaning against the door, was silent, his eyes as sharp as a scalpel. He announced it, Ethan said. Richard didn't ask, who? He knew Ethan was referring to Philip Worth, the former Roosevelt director who was being sued but who had leaked a sensitive internal document to ProPublica just 30 minutes earlier. Breaking news. Lee Holdings settles many labor lawsuits from 1999–2011 inches. The documents were authenticated by a third party. They clearly stated that more than 19 cases were related to labor exploitation complaints at hotels formerly owned by Lee Holdings. Some victims did not have access to lawyers. The group then chose the solution of confidential mediation, without admitting responsibility. And the signature on those documents is Richard Lee's. 18th floor office, 11:47 a.m. I need you to explain. Dad. Ethan sat down on the opposite chair. Richard sighed. No evasion. No denial. At that time, I was fighting to survive in an industry where if you don't bite back, you get eaten. By silencing people? Ethan asked, his voice strained. You paid people to keep quiet while you built your brand as a compassionate leader. Richard closed his eyes. Yes, and I'm not proud of it. But I did it to save thousands of jobs. To keep larger projects from collapsing because of a few local mistakes. I didn't have the perfect choice. Ethan stood up and walked around the table. His eyes seemed to be drawn into the darkness. I stood up in the world. You know, I spoke of morality, of justice, of truth. But right under my feet was a foundation built of blood and silence. Richard looked straight at his son. Yes, and if you really believe what you say, then change that. Not by putting me down, but by standing above me. That afternoon, staff break room, Roosevelt, Maria, Juan, and Sayuri sat in front of Ethan. No more papers, no more presentations, just three people, once believers, now feeling shaken. Sayuri spoke first, her voice hesitant. I don't know what to think anymore. You're the one who makes us dare to hope. But if you were raised in a system like the ones we fight against, then, would you be different from them? Juan said in a low voice. You didn't choose where you were born. But now you are in a position to choose how you live. Don't forget that. Maria looked at Ethan for a long time. If you apologize to the public now, admitting your father's mistake, you will lose the trust of investors. If you stay silent, you will lose our trust. Ethan nodded. And so, I'm going to do what no one else does. I'm going to tell the whole truth. But this time, not through the press. Not through a clip, but in person. In a meeting with the entire staff and the press. 2 days later, Roosevelt Plaza, 4 p.m. Ethan stepped onto the small stage, usually used for internal meetings. But today, he had invited more than 200 employees, press representatives, and labor rights organizations. No LED screens. No clips. Just Ethan, a microphone, and a decision. I am not here to deny my family's past. I am not here to defend those mistakes. I am here to confirm, we were wrong. And I, as the successor, will not let that continue. I propose the establishment of an independent, third-party run labor ethics commission with the authority to investigate all human resources practices within the Lee Holdings hotel chain, including Roosevelt. We will reopen the files of 19 old lawsuits. Contact each individual. Invite them to dialogue. If they agree, we will pay unconditional compensation and publicly apologize. The hall fell silent. Then the first claps rang out, from Juan. Then Maria. Then the whole hall stood up. Applauding imperfect, but true courage. That night, Richard Lee's office. Ethan opened the door and placed the plan for the ethics committee on the table. Will you sign? Richard looked at his son. Eyes filled with tears. I used to hope you would be better than me. Today, I believe, you have done it. He signed. New York, 1 week after Ethan announced the ethics committee. Things seemed to be stabilizing. Internal meetings were held regularly. The Roosevelt Plaza restructuring plan was hailed by the media as the first model of humane restructuring in the service industry. Richard Lee publicly signed a commitment to make all personnel records transparent. And Lee Holdings stock began to recover. But then, Tuesday, 3:27 a.m. Twitter erupts with its first wave of fake news. An anonymous account named it Truth Leaks Unfiltered posted a long article with the title, Maria C. Roosevelt's heroine was actually the person arrested for shoplifting at a Bronx retail store in 2015? Attached was a blurry scan of what appeared to be a summons from the Bronx District Court. With the name, Maria Campos. The online community is divided into two streams. One side defends, saying this is a despicable smear campaign. The other side begins to question the true motives of the people Ethan uses as his representative faces. Less than 10 hours later, similar posts appeared on Facebook, Reddit, and even some far-right political blogs. The hashtag fake victims began trending. 8:12 a.m., Roosevelt Plaza 18th floor office. Ethan walked in as Maria sat silently in the corner of the conference room. Her face pale, her hands clutching her bag. Sayuri sat beside him, trembling, her eyes red. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked. Maria looked up, placing a phone in front of him that was open to an article from a tabloid. Model worker, Maria C. was a petty criminal? "No one asked me," she said, her voice hoarse. "No one verified. But now my son is being teased by his friends. My school is asking if I'm under investigation. I just want to live in peace." Ethan took her hand. "Maria, we'll work this out. But I need to know, is 2015 real?" Maria looked straight at him. "Yes. I was arrested for stealing 2 cartons of milk. I lost my job and had no money to buy milk for my child. I was arrested, but the court overturned the sentence because of special circumstances. I never hid it, but I didn't think the past would become a weapon against the present." Ethan was silent. His face was cold as steel. Then he turned to Sayuri. "What's wrong?" Sayuri hiccuped slightly. "Someone sent my private photos to Japanese investors. They said I used to post sexy photos on my personal blog. I deleted them before I even started working. But they dug them up again." At the same time, a photo of Ethan was leaked. He was drunk at a graduation party in Oxford years ago. Shirt unbuttoned, laughing loudly with a strange girl. The photo was posted with the caption, "This is the morality of a man who teaches an entire service industry about humanities." Social media began to shift. If Ethan is no different from everyone else, is it all just a PR stunt? 12:45 p.m., coffee shop near Roosevelt Plaza. Gary, the former security guard who was fired after the "chasing away the delivery man" clip, sat in the corner of the shop. Wearing headphones, smiling as he read the news that was spreading. He sipped his coffee, pulled out his phone and called. "Phase 2 begins. Bring in the alt-right Reddit group. Crush that hypocritical image." 1500, Ethan's office. An emergency meeting was called. The corporation's lawyer advised Ethan, "We can ask for the article to be taken down. Sue for defamation. But that will only escalate the situation. He can hold press conferences, deny information, temporarily isolate affected figures, to preserve the image of reform," said a media advisor. Ethan slammed his hand on the table. "We cannot defend Roosevelt by turning our backs on the very people who stood up." He stood up. "Prepare an open press conference. Invite Maria, Sayuri, and those affected. Don't hide anything. The truth will be the weapon, not the cover." 2 days later, Roosevelt Plaza, Grand Hall press conference. The media came in even larger numbers than on the night of the original announcement. But this time, they weren't looking for an inspirational story. They were looking for an opportunity to dig, question, and criticize. Ethan stepped onto the stage. Maria and Sayuri sat in the front row, eyes filled with concern. Richard Lee was also there. Not interfering this time, he was there to listen. Ethan looked straight into the camera. "I stand here today to confirm that the allegations that are circulating are not entirely true. But they are not entirely false either. Maria made mistakes, but she did it to raise her children. And because of that, she understands the value of a decent job better than anyone in this room. Sayuri had a youth like everyone else, living freely online. But she never did anything wrong at work. And I've been stupid. I've been to parties. I've said things without thinking. But because of that, I know that none of us are perfect." Ethan paused for a few seconds. True reform is not about building a squeaky clean image. It is about accepting the truth, even when it is messy, ugly, and unforgiving. A reporter raised his hand. "So are you resigning?" Ethan looked straight ahead. "No, because I don't want to let those who try to change be abandoned halfway. And if I fall down, no one will dare to stand up again." End of press conference. Media split into 2 streams. Some newspapers criticized Ethan for protecting criminals and maintaining a false image of a savior. But the majority of the public began to share the story of Maria feeding her child with milk cartons stolen from the supermarket as a symbol of her efforts to survive. New hashtag emerging. Hashtag We Are Maria. 3 months after the big press conference at Roosevelt Plaza. The hotel looked the same: crystal chandeliers, marble floors, classical music wafting through the opulent space, but deep inside, a whole new system had begun operating. In the basement, employees take breaks in a new, clean dining room with natural light from a skylight, something they never had before. Each week, they hear directly from the executive team through reverse meetings. Employees ask questions. Management answers. Ethan Lee is no longer serving as acting executive at Roosevelt, because he officially gave that position back to those who were once considered invisible. Monday, 8:05 a.m., Roosevelt Plaza Executive Office. A new nameplate was posted on the door. Maria Campos, Internal Operations Human Resources Director. Next to it are 2 small rooms, one for Juan, head of training and work culture, who inspires the new generation of employees, and one for Sayuri, in charge of internal communications and anonymous feedback management. Ethan did not sit at the head of the table at this morning's meeting. He came as an independent advisor, sitting in the back, listening, when Maria presented her plan to conduct cross-cultural training for new employees. Ethan's eyes lit up. He knew this was something he had never done as a leader, trusting someone else's abilities enough to let go. Wednesday, Lee Holdings headquarters. On the 52nd floor, where Ethan was once questioned about his succession, a large notice now hangs. Lee Holdings announced the establishment of the International Labor Ethics Foundation, ILEF. First director, Ethan Lee. Unlike a hereditary corporate executive position, ILEF is an independent organization, not directly managed by any hotel chain. Its objectives are independent monitoring of human resource systems in the service industry, legal support for exploited workers worldwide, publish periodic HR ethics index, scoring the whole industry, from hotels, restaurants to retail chains. Richard Lee, in a press conference, said bluntly, "It took me 20 years to build an empire. It took my son 6 months to make it worth living." 1 week later, CNN News. Special news broadcast across the U.S. From deliveryman to changemaker. Ethan Lee's journey. The man who made Roosevelt Plaza a new model for global service. In the video, the host interviews Juan, Maria, Sayuri, and even a few former employees who left Roosevelt because of injustice, and are now invited back. Sayuri said, "Ethan didn't give us the dream. He just opened the door for us to walk in. A normal morning in Brooklyn, 10:15 a.m. Ethan, dressed in a gray hoodie and jeans, strolled around a small hotel that had just been renovated to resemble the Roosevelt. This was the first experiment in internal democracy. Employees were allowed to elect department heads through regular ballots." A young receptionist ran after her and called out, "Ethan, someone ordered pizza, but no one remembers ordering it." Ethan was surprised. "Who ordered it?" "Don't know. Just right, old friend." He walked out the door. A middle-aged man in an old delivery jacket was waiting. No stranger. It was Gary's guard, once a symbol of segregation in Roosevelt. But now, he stood there, silent, not raising his voice, not wearing sunglasses like before. He held out the pizza box, his eyes slightly lowered. Ethan opened the box. Inside was a piece of paper folded into 4. "I was wrong, but I went back to school. Now I work at a motel in Jersey, like a real employee. No one knows who I am. But thanks for making me see how bad I was." Ethan looked up. Gary had turned away. "No thanks." He stood there, watching his back, then smiled slightly, not because of victory, but because a circle has just closed. That afternoon, ILEF office. On the wall hangs a black and white photograph. A delivery boy standing in the middle of a hotel lobby being chased away, a moment that has entered the media as an icon. Below is the small text. "Want to know the true nature of a place? Ask the lowest person in the hierarchy." Ethan walked in, pulled out his phone, and received a text from Maria. Juan just signed the first contract to train the hotel system in Mexico. "You won." He typed back. "No, we win." That night, Ethan walked past Roosevelt Plaza. Didn't go in, just stood in the doorway. A delivery vehicle stopped. The young man got off. holding the food box, and was about to go in when he was stopped by the security guard. "Excuse me, please go through the back door." But before he could turn around, a female voice rang out from inside, "Maria. No, please go through the main door." The boy looked surprised, then smiled, then walked in. Ethan stood there, in the dark. "No one recognizes you. No need to recognize." He turned and left.